In the not-too-distant future, following the rapid succession of World Wars III and IV, plus the hidden horrors of secret World War II, there's not much left. All that remains is a place where folks get together to read and discuss comic books. Sometimes they laugh, sometimes they argue, but they always record and upload their transmissions. You've found one of those transmissions today. Welcome to the last comic shop.
Meanwhile, back beneath stately Wayne Manor.
Atomic batteries to power. Turbines to speed.
All right, chum. Our work is cut out for us. We've got to find a Fabergé egg and review Batman Universe.
Wait a minute. Why does the Batmobile have atomic energy? Isn't that kind of dangerous?
It's very dangerous. He also has a dinosaur in his house.
And a giant penny. Anyways, it's the last comic shop, and I'm the host with the most, Andy Larson, and of course I'm joined by my wonderful co-hosts, J.A. Scott and Chad Smith, who just did a fantastic job recreating, not the beginning of Batman 66, it was like typically somewhere in the middle, it was after the bat poles and all that other stuff, but it was seen on every single episode. You knew that once the fake hazard sign fell down and it said Gotham City 15 miles, you knew we were in for an adventure. And we've got an adventure on today's program. As Chad alluded to, we're going to be reviewing Brian Michael Bendis and Nick Derington doing Batman Universe, a 6-part.
It's originally a 12-part story when it was back in Walmart times.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So we only read the first 6 issues?
No. It's 6 issues. But it was originally part of the Walmart $5 Giant series, where you would get 12 pages at a time.
Oh,
so it's 6 issues, but you got it on layaway.
Exactly. You got some other stuff too, but yeah, pretty much.
Well, what I wanted to talk about on today's program, in addition to that, was, again, since we're talking about the Caped Crusader, I thought it would be a wonderful opportunity to talk about the other big part of any Batman story, which is Batman's Rogues Gallery, right? I mean, honestly, other than Batman, his supporting characters and his Rogues Gallery, that's really what brings you to the book. And I think that he's got the second best Rogues Gallery in comic books. I still think Spider-Man's the best. So I thought on today's program, we would give all of our fans out there our picks for the best member of the Rogues Gallery from Batman. So we'll start off with Chad. Chad, what is your pick for the best member of that Rogues Gallery?
We already alluded to the fact that I am a Batman 66 fan. And so one of the best on that show and one of the Batman's best villains is the Riddler. He's got the gimmick. He's got the style and the panache. And he's not so over the top like the Joker, where that just gets kind of too abrasive. Like the Riddler, he might be a good guy in a story. He might be the bad guy. He's probably the bad guy. But he's always going to be fun. And I think he's the embodiment of what the Batman villains are all about. He's got his gimmick. He's got his style. He's pretty awesome.
I agree. The Riddler is pretty cool, but I think it's just because Frank Gorshin was just the best villain on that 66 show.
He was the only one with menace in his eyes.
Yes!
Like, everybody else seemed like they were there for some sort of, like, discotheque party. Not Frank Gorshin. He was there to put on boxer shorts and mess somebody up.
What's your take, then, on the Jim Carrey Riddler?
The same as my take on Garbage Can. I'm not a fan of that one.
Well, there are things to put trash in? I don't get the analogy.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not as good as the Riddler. I'm like a Jim Carrey level. But yeah, that was not cool. There's a level of control that the Joker doesn't have. The Joker's just flat out crazy. And that's what Jim Carrey got wrong. He went over the top with the craziness. But like the Riddler, this guy not only has to commit crimes, he's got to think up little tiny riddles and, put things in notes and boxes and things and hide them for Batman. He's got to plan that stuff out.
It is a lot of logistic work, for sure. J.A., what is your favorite Batman Rogues Gallery member?
Oh, my favorite Batman Rogues Gallery member is No Brainer. It's got to be Catwoman.
Oh,
Meow, exactly.
She is not a Batman villain anymore. She made her face turn like 20 years ago.
Well, that's just because she became popular and writers had a hard time writing the anti-hero bad guy thing then. So we got to make her good so we can write stories about her and the kids will read it when the kids liked her because she was bad. So no, thank you very much. She is firmly entrenched in the Batman Rogues Gallery. And I like all the portrayals of her, by the way. If you're talking Michelle Pfeiffer, meow. If you're talking Eartha Kitt, meow, meow.
What about Julie Newmar? You going to forget all about her?
Of course, you cannot forget Julie Newmar, and thanks for everything.
All right. Well, my favorite member of the Rogues Gallery, it has to be Two-Face. I've always been a huge, huge fan of Two-Face, and Two-Face is more of Batman's, evil alter ego, because I think he takes everything that Batman's doing, and he kind of just takes it one step too far. He's Batman if Batman had a really bad day and got half of his face messed up. Because that's what
That was
Harvey did.
Azrael.
No, Azrael was he was misguided at the very least.
Okay.
No, Harvey Dent had similar MO to Bruce Wayne, in which he wanted to stop crime. He was good looking, he was athletic and all this great stuff, and then he had a bad day and somebody threw acid in his face, or it was a bomb, or whatever the origin story you're going to commit to. And as a result of that, he had his falling down moment. I'm going to pretend that I still want to be a champion for order, when in essence it's just a really veiled order that's entrenched in chaos, because he flips that coin, which is, I think, the awesomest thing that anybody can ever do. When you flip the coin and you say, my order is determined by a probability, that's in essence chaotic. Plus, he had one of the best two-parters of Batman the Animated Series. I will challenge anybody not to watch the original Two-Face two-parter from Batman the Animated Series and not get choked up. Aww. I was just surprised nobody said, "Ice to see you."
Well, that was a great episode of the animated series. I think that one got their Emmys.
That's true. It did. I think they should have just stuck with that. And I hope that you stick with us for our review of Batman Universe Plus, a special guest coming up right after these messages.
Have you ever been reading through a stack of comics and thought, maybe I should see what this Arkham Asylum game is all about? Or been playing Marvel vs. Capcom and felt like you were at a real disadvantage since you didn't know who half the characters were? Well, Play Comics is the show for you. I'm Chris, and each episode we take a look at video games based on comic properties and how well they stick to that source material. So whether you know the comics and want to know how all these games work, or you know the games and want to find out where all this craziness came from, go check out Play Comics at playcomics.com or wherever you find your favorite podcasts.
All right, we're back with more of The Last Comic Shop. And before we get to our book review for this week, we've got a special treat for all of our fans. We've got John Engel from New Dimension Comics and the Three Rivers Con, one of the greatest Comic Cons here in the great city of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, which is going to be happening this weekend. And we wanted to bring him on today's show because I will be honest, I'm super excited just to go to a con. Even if it's in a parking lot, I don't care. I just need to get to a con.
Yeah, we need to temper expectations a little bit. This is not your traditional show. So, John, why don't you tell us, what is Three Rivers Comic Con going to look like?
Well, first, thanks for having me on, guys. This is great. It's good to see you guys again. I'm glad you guys are all staying nerdy and healthy. So, Three Rivers Comic Con this year, we're actually putting a tag on it and calling it Light. For a couple reasons. One, it's a beer joke, and we make our own beer for the shows. This year we'll not have a beer. Two, because it's outside in the daylight. And three, because it's on a smaller scale. So there's your three jokes in one. Three Rivers Comic Con Light. So this year, because of the pandemic and a lot of the restrictions, we had to get creative in a way to do this. And as more people are getting vaccinated and things are lightening up, it is helping us a lot with being able to do things outside. So we partnered with the Waterfront, which is where we had the 2019 show. I want to say last year, but obviously that didn't happen. We came up with this idea of throwing it into a parking lot. It's called the Overflow Lot. So it's the space that's between the old Steak and Shake and the Farmers National Bank. There's actually like a parking lot by the main road. So we're going to pack that thing with tents. I think I did the math today, and it's somewhere around 100 vendors or creators. Vendors like comic vendors. We have nerd crafters. We have smaller press creators. And then we have guys like Sean Gabarin, who worked for Action Lab for a long time, did Puppet Master. George Broderick Jr., who used to work for Innovation Comics and does a lot of cartooning in Pittsburgh. And Ernie Steiner, who had worked on Nick Fury. So that's cool. And then we're also going to have Aftershock Comics there as a publisher.
Cool. Yeah.
Yep, they're awesome. We've supported them a lot. It will mostly be like a representative of them. They will not be taking submissions, so don't do that. It starts at noon. Well, technically it starts at 10 if you want to pay $5 for a 2-hour early bird, and you can buy that at the store that morning, or you can do it Friday all day at our Waterfront location. You can get your wristband and be ready to roll for 10 o'clock. So from 10 to 12, the only people that can shop are the people with the early bird wristband for the extra $5. But at 12 o'clock, it is free for everybody from noon to 7. So we are following PA COVID mitigations. So whatever the mitigations are at that point, that's what we're dealing with. Right now, it's still looking like mass because of the crowd size. So be prepared. Not that you're not used to it now.
I'd rather stay safe. I'm excited to just have a con. You don't understand what a long year it has been. And I think that even with the couple creators that you've got, with Aftershock Comics being there, with the vendors being there, with the comic books being available, I just want to go through some long boxes. I just really need to
That's it.
some dollar boxes and just be around other comic book fans. So I'm really, really looking forward to Three Rivers Con this year.
And I would dare say, too, this almost feels like a throwback to like the olden days when cons would just be in a hotel lobby. Like you're taking it back. You're going retro and somehow meeting the needs of our modern times at the same time. I think it's really awesome. You're getting folks out there and keeping the comic book love going.
Yeah, as I was talking to our board, I said, we're at the precipice of a dam that is everybody that wants to go to these cons and do things and be around people, but they can't yet because of the pandemic and the restrictions. And as those things let loose, that dam is going to crack open and it is going to burst, and it's just going to be crazy. We hope that it's not super crazy, because obviously we don't want to have to like call police for anything, because that would suck. But
style,
right. But
it sounds like you're doing it the right way.
Yeah, we're trying to be proactive in it, and take care of everybody at the same time and not put anybody in jeopardy. And it's going to be a fun time no matter what, because I know a lot of these people haven't really seen anybody in a while and are just itching to just see people, and I think that's cool. Like we're excited to see people too. I mean, we see them in the stores, but we really want to see this thing continue on, and we didn't want to go a whole nother year of not having a show. And then we're going to have a similar event in October with more information coming on that. So,
well, maybe you can get some beer back for that one. I mean, it'll be around Oktoberfest, and I've always enjoyed the beers at the Three Rivers Con. So, real quickly, John, though, before I let you go, do you have a couple comic book recommendations you might want to throw out to our fans? Just a couple new things out there on the market that they should check out?
Sure. Shadow Man by Valiant is awesome. It's back. Colin Bunn, the master of horror, has written a great book. You should definitely check that out. Scout put out an awesome book called Galactic Rodents of Mayhem, which is think Biker Mice from Mars type thing. And in true Scout fashion, it's a single floppy of #1, and then it'll be released as a graphic novel. They did that with Metal Shark Bro 1 and 2, and they both did very well. So make sure you check those out too, because they're awesome. The Beta Ray Bill that Marvel's been putting out has been killer. Deja Thoris from Dynamite has been excellent. Dan Abnett's been just crushing that book. Yeah.
Dan does so much good stuff. Like anytime he gets on a book, like whether it's that, I loved his run on Masters of the Universe when he was doing like that old Eternity War thing or whatever.
Yeah.
He was doing that for DC. So he does that high fantasy cosmic stuff real great.
Aftershock has Nuclear Family. That's been great. Vault put out Witchblood, which is kind of interesting as well. It's kind of got like a Buffy vibe to it. She's the witch, and the vampires are like basically bloodthirsty for witch blood. It's like the best tasting blood ever. So it's that mixed with like a Wild West with like motorcycles. So it's pretty much like the funnest thing in the world.
This locale blood, it's so great.
I know, right?
It's the best tasting stuff.
I only drink witch blood.
Witch blood is the only blood to have blood.
It's like my French press coffee. You're not giving that to me. Forget it.
That's awesome, John. You gave us a ton of great recommendations, and I'll tell you what, you're excited about the people coming to the show. I'm excited about the comics, so I'm really
that too.
pumped.
Yeah.
We've got some new stuff to check out.
Make sure you guys come out and you'll definitely find some comics for sure.
All right. Well, thank you so much for stopping by at the Last Comic Shop, and we hope to see you at Three Rivers Con this week. And John,
I will definitely be there. I will see you guys there. Take care and stay safe, guys.
All right, so now on to our bread and butter for every Last Comic Shop episode, and that is our comic book review. And as I said before the commercial break, we are doing Batman Universe by Brian Michael Bendis with art by the terrific Nick Derington. I'm going to say it up front because I love Nick Derington art. I have been waiting to do this book for a long time just because he is the bee's knees, in my opinion. So, Chad, other than Brian Michael Bendis, which everybody knows, and Nick Derington, which I hope everybody knows by the end of this episode, who else worked on this 6-issue story?
Well, you're forgetting about Dave Stewart on colors, who you might know him from his work with Mike Mignola, or he's been around for a generation of, making comics, making great comics. And then we had Josh Reed on letters. But one thing that's neat about this book, this actually originated back, and I want to say it was 2018, when Brian Michael Bendis first came to DC. It also coincided with a program that DC was doing with Walmart, where they would put out these 100-page giant issues. And so they took the guy that was writing Batman at the time, and they let him write the Superman 100-page giants. And they took the guy that was writing Superman at the time, which was Bendis, and they gave him the Batman version. And they were really cool. They had 4 different comics therein. You would get a brand new story with, like I said, the Bendis and Derington stuff, and then you would get some of the Jim Lee Hush storyline, and they would do New 52 Nightwing, and then Batwoman or Harley Quinn. It was a neat way to introduce folks to comics. And then, when the pandemic hit, they stopped. What? I know. So they just stopped around it, issue 5 was the last issue for a lot of these things where, we're anticipating them going to 12 or 13 issues like the previous run had. But Walmart, instead of doing the 100-page giants, now they just pack 4 or 5 recent comic books together and they'll sell that to you for $10. And that's how you get your Walmart comics.
Oh, that's a sad. Although I used to get those 4-packs at Walmart back in the 90s. That's how I got my Jim Valentino Guardians of the Galaxy issues, which I didn't realize if you got multiple packs, they still gave you the same comics. Because there was a different one on the cover, and I was like, it's going to be different. No, I just got the same 4 issues.
You thought it was like baseball cards. Ooh, maybe I'll get a rookie card. Oh, no, it's the same thing again.
They had to put them somewhere.
Where's my stick of gum?
But in any case, let's get the 10-cent synopsis from J.A. Scott. So what happens in Batman Universe? Does he travel the universe? Is it a universe of Batmans? What's happening here?
He does travel the universe a bit. So basically, it starts out Batman's chasing Riddler because Riddler has stolen this Fabergé egg that once belonged to Jonah Hex. And turns out that this Fabergé egg is actually just a container holding a very powerful cosmic device, which by the end, spoiler alert, you find out is a power ring of the Green Lantern Corps. And the big bad throughout the whole series is Vandal Savage, who's been chasing this power ring for centuries, trying to get a hold of it. The big issue is that the power ring is broken. So it is emanating power and uncontrollably, and the subroutine's wrong, and Batman gets involved, and Ring takes over Batman, and suddenly Batman doesn't exist, and then he's locked in this pocket universe, and he gets transported over to the Hawkman universe for a little bit, and they say hi, and he's like, yeah, I know Hawkman, I'm the Batman. I'm like, who are you? I'm the Batman, let me go. But can you fly? No, I just glide. Well, that's kind of lame. And ultimately, Batman has to figure out what's going wrong with the ring and fix it before the Green Lantern Corps beat him up, because this is too much power for even Batman to handle, and it's going to rip apart the universe and blah, blah, blah. And it is a very nice 6-issue, self-contained, fun story that's got lots of humor, lots of great action, jumps around in time, jumps across the universe, is a bit cosmic in spots, but ultimately is still very much a quintessential Batman story.
Well, I was going to say, before we go too far, you're not buying this book for the plot. You're buying this book because Batman teams up with Green Lantern and there are dinosaurs. Or Batman teams up with Hawkman and he gets Hawkman wings, even though, it wasn't officially Hawkman. Or Batman is going to the Old West and smelling like somebody who lives in the Old West. Like, that's what this book is about.
Well, I'm glad that you brought up the fact that you weren't buying this book for the plot, because, and this is just my initial thoughts. I was very excited to read this book because, again, I'm a big fan of Nick Derington art. I have liked Nick Derington since I saw him originally on the Young Animals version of the Doom Patrol series. And I loved it. I loved how he drew Robot Man and Mr. Negative and all those great characters from Doom Patrol. So I was very excited to see him take a crack at a lot of the other members of the DC universe, which is what I got in this book, which was awesome. Like, he has a really great style that's very reminiscent to me of another artist that I really, really love, which is Mike Allred. It's very cartoony, it's very stylized, but at the end of the day, it just looks nice on paper. But when it came to this, I was also excited because I'm like, I like some Brian Michael Bendis stuff. I like the way he has people talk to one another, like his dialogue, as I brought up on an earlier show when we talked about Brian K. Vaughan and how people that have the first name Brian just seem to know how to write comic book dialogue. And that's the case with Brian Michael Bendis. The only problem with Brian Michael Bendis dialogue is if you read one Brian Michael Bendis book and then you read another one, they all talk the same. Like, this isn't the way that Batman talks. This is the way that Brian Michael Bendis characters talk. This isn't the way that Hal Jordan talks. This is the way that Brian Michael Bendis Hal Jordan talks, which is the same way that Brian Michael Bendis Kingpin talks, and the same way that Brian Michael Bendis Miles Morales talks. They all talk the same. And so from a dialogue perspective, it's real crisp and poppy, and it sounds nice. It's like Ernest Hemingway, where you write one real sentence, that's all you need in a book. Well, he writes a lot of real dialogue. This is the way that real people talk to one another. It's the only problem is it all sounds the same. Like, there's no character behind this Batman. Interrupt me at any point, guys, if I'm getting this wrong.
The problem is you're wrong and you're not wrong. This is what Bendis does, but also this is what you pay Brian Michael Bendis for, right? And we've had this conversation way, way back where Batman by himself as a character, he's so undefined. That's really the best part about the character, is you can make him do whatever you want. If you want to make Batman into a campy Adam West style, let's go get him, chum, you can do that. If you want to make him talk like Christian Bale, you can do that. If you want to put him with some glasses and a duster jacket and call him Batfleck and give him a brand, it's stupid, but you can do that. The character is malleable enough that really it comes down to the personality of the creators.
Batman is like the ultimate mirror into what the creator wants to become and wants Batman to become. I agree. He's so big and he's so defined not by his character but by the environment more that you put him in, I think. Like, Spider-Man is defined by who he is and his values and everything.
He
Batman
has a personality.
is very much right, and Batman is very much defined by where you place him in that moment. That's why Batman Elseworld stories, I think, work so well, because Batman can be put into the Wild West and it works. You can put Batman in, London, England during the time of Jack the Ripper, and it works. He's not of our time. He's of any time, of any moment. And I think that's why I enjoyed this book so much, was that, I could see that this was a Batman book, because Batman books can be anything. They can be camp. They can be hardcore horror. They can be, anything in between.
It's a Batman book because Batman is in it. And that's what makes a Batman book. You can do whatever else you want.
Right.
Well, and
that's why Batman Lego Batman is so great.
The Bruce Lee quote, he's like, when you pour water into a pitcher, the water becomes the pitcher. Be like water. That's what Batman is. Batman is like water. He doesn't have a taste to himself, but he's whatever taste you need him to be. He fills whatever container you need him to fill. That's Batman.
See, I get it. I'm not going to disagree with you. You guys have made valid points, and I do agree that's why you can put them in Elseworld stories. But again, and maybe I'm super critical of Brian Michael Bendis. I think Chad has pointed out at times that I can be a little bit critical of Bendis's writing. And it's simply because, I don't know, maybe I was expecting more from this series. Maybe I was. Maybe I had really high expectations. I was like, oh man, it's going to have Batman, and he's going to be meeting up with dinosaurs, and Batman's in the Wild West, and then Batman gets awesome power armor, and he gets to team up with Nightwing, which was cool. I won't lie. I really loved
spread.
That was more Nick Derington art than it was Brian Michael Bendis writing. Come on, that one-page spread with them running around inside the ship beating up all the ninjas. That was Nick Derington.
But that doesn't make it less awesome.
I didn't say it wasn't less awesome.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying is...
Bendis put them on the ship. He's the one that allowed it to happen.
That's right.
Good gravy.
And what about the page with the dinosaurs? And Batman's like, I love dinosaurs. And what? He's like, yeah, I have a giant one in my cave.
Oh yeah, I need a cave.
Again, it's like Hemingway when there's lines that are true, and so that was a line that was true. That was one of those moments where why hasn't anybody ever said this before? Because it makes sense. He has a dinosaur in his cave. Of course, Batman likes dinosaurs. I mean, it makes perfect sense. But at the same time, Hal Jordan. Is Hal Jordan? Is he a pitcher of your glass of water or whatever?
Okay. Yes, and here's why. And this comes back to something J.A. had talked about off show one day. He's like, why don't we pick a DC book in continuity? And the reason is because DC continuity sucks. Because DC characters, they are more about being icons. They're more about being gods. And, you put them in these various roles. And that's why the Elseworld stories always tend to work better. Because the regular DC continuity, their characters aren't strong enough. They've been around for too long and been stretched in too many different ways. They're not defined enough to be well-developed characters anymore. And so they're all like that. What is Hal Jordan's personality?
Hal Jordan's personality is whatever he makes the ring into at that moment.
The giant fist.
So what you're saying is that basically Brian Michael Bendis is the perfect writer for DC because none of them have personality, so he can just give them all his personality, so he's recycled from 6 other books that he wrote before?
No, I didn't say that.
Well, that's how I feel reading this. I read this dialogue, and I'm like, this is really great dialogue for Batman and Green Lantern going on their Wild West journey. But I'm like, I think I read this before between Peter Parker and Miles Morales. I think I read this before between Luke Cage and his Danny Rand. This is the same conversation. Well, Luke, we're back in the Old West. Yeah, it really smells bad.
Remember in New Avengers, whenever they had Electro there, and Luke Cage was standing in front of him, he's like, what do you do with them normally? And Spider-Man's like, normally I just web up my hands and hit him. And he's like, all right, web me up. And then Electro faints. because he's a coward. That was great.
It is, but it was great the first time that you saw it. Now this is a retread. I'm just trying to point out that even though there were great moments of dialogue in this, it felt like it was a retread. It was a repeat. It was something that, if it hadn't been for the Nick Derington art, this would be somewhat forgettable, in my opinion. And that's sad to say because it had Batman and dinosaurs. And what the hell was up with the power ring at the end? I didn't buy that at all. I just didn't. I honestly wish they wouldn't have shown us what was in the Fabergé egg. Like, I wish they would have kept it as a mysterious MacGuffin. Or maybe they opened it up and it was Brian Michael Bendis' head. I don't care what was in there. It was just messing up the time and giving you a reason to move from one issue to the next. All the Green Lantern Corps shows up and was like, oh, we're going to arrest you. Where's that coming from? Most of them have worked with Batman. They're not going to arrest Batman.
Are you sure? Batman's a super dick. Of course they would arrest Batman.
Also because they have no sense of humor. And that's what I always get from the Green Lantern Corps. They're the worst kind of do-gooders. They're the ones that can't see anything of gray. Everything's got to be black and white, or in this case, green and white and black. And they're like, if you're not with us, you're against us, and we must take you down.
No, like it didn't make any sense at
Okay,
all.
to your point, and I can't tell, I'm working it out in my head if you're either the perfect person to do this review or the worst person to do this review, and I think it's both. Okay, we alluded to this a little bit earlier, but the history of this was when Bendis left Marvel and signed his exclusive contract with DC. He had only ever written one small short story for DC before. And so this, along with his work on Superman, this was Bendis' entry level into the DC universe, where the DC fans, are secretly jealous of what the Marvel fans have had for years, to the point that they bought a Bendis. This is what they wanted. They wanted the Ollie Queen, with that little bit of snap to him. They wanted that Brave and the Bold style interaction, like, did we fight? Did I win? And Batman's like, of course.
I feel shame.
Yeah.
That was awesome.
But that's what you pay for. And so you're simultaneously right in the fact that, is it a retread? In a way, like, this is his style. This is what you're bringing to the yard. So if you don't like that, you're not going to like this at all. But at the same time, if you're a DC fan, you're like, holy crap, there's Bendis writing Green Arrow. Oh, there's Bendis writing Green Lantern. Holy crap, there's Bendis writing Batman in the Old West, hanging out with Jonah Hex. Green Lantern's making him throw up.
But how did he survive from the bullet wound in the chest? Like, how did that work?
The Fabergé egg wanted him to survive.
Why did the Fabergé egg? Because it picked him.
Yeah, because he's the most
that wasn't
worthy.
explained. No,
they alluded to it. It's fine.
They alluded to nothing. I think you're putting on some rose-colored glasses, sir, and saying they gave me Batman in a Hawkman costume, and of course I'm just going to give this a free pass. No, I'm happy that they put this out in Walmarts. I won't lie, because again, this is approachable Batman. This is very approachable Batman. Like, that's the greatest thing about Brian Michael Bendis. He makes stuff that's like cotton candy. It tastes good regardless of who you are. You're going to eat it because it tastes good and it makes sense. No, it doesn't make sense, but it tastes good. And
it doesn't have to make sense.
And it doesn't have to make sense.
Lucky Charms don't make a lick of sense.
It's empty calories.
Stars, moons, and clovers at the same time. What the hell?
Come on, you can't say that you didn't get excited in issue 5 when the Fabergé egg is all glowing and Batman's there, and then he just breaks into, in the brightest day, in the blackest night, no evil shall escape my sight. You're like, what? Ah!
Oh, man, They already had me. They had me when Batman had his techno suit on. Do you guys remember back in the 90s when they had that digital art Batman book that came out? I can't think of the name of it, but that was the bat symbol in that book. And he's there, and the cave it's the 3D technology where he's working in the cave, but he's not really in the cave. That's awesome. You just hate Brian Michael Bendis.
I do not just hate. Well, okay, I hate him a little bit. I don't know. Just a little tad bit. There have been a lot of Brian Michael Bendis books I've liked. And I won't lie that there were moments in this one that I liked.
You're just mad he blew up Vision 15 years ago.
Well, wouldn't you be? Wouldn't you be? I was very disappointed in that. And you know what? He stayed dead for like 15 years. Nobody would touch Vision. He was like radioactive. He was like, ugh, I don't want to write a Vision book after Bendis blew him up. And anyways, I'm not going into that. I won't lie. I liked it when he said like, oh, we're going to get the dynamic duo back together. And I really like that Nightwing issue. I think that was the best issue of the whole bunch. But at the same time, issue 6 didn't make any sense at all. Like, it just didn't. Like, he went into the power ring. What the heck's that?
That was great, though, whenever you see Batman being the guy who's in ultimate control of things, and he's there in that white space, he's like, all right, I'm Batman. Patience, breathe. This could be fun as long as my physical body's okay. And then the very next thing is that 2-page splash, and Nightwing's like, Batman's physical body is not okay! Moving his stop.
But I don't understand how any of the Green Lantern Corps would think they were going to arrest Batman.
Who cares?
I don't want to go back to this because, like, haven't you ever seen what is it, the Tower of Babel or whatever, where Batman has like a way to defeat everybody in the freaking DC universe,
including a Green Lantern?
Remember, it's a DC book. It doesn't matter. Continuity doesn't matter. You just need to enjoy the story for what it is in the moment because it doesn't matter. None of it matters. It's a DC book.
Oh, this from the guy that was crapping on Superman versus Imperious Lex a couple weeks ago? Said that was cotton candy fluff, but this cotton candy fluff is fine.
Because it's more enjoyable.
And they sold this at the freaking circus. You go to Walmart, pick this up, and like, oh, okay, I like this.
All right, well, we'll be right back with more Last Comic Shop right after these messages. We're going to get our grades for this, and I won't lie, you'll be surprised by what my grade is going to be.
He secretly loves it. He loves Bendis. They're smooching out in the back.
My name is Nicholas Haskins, and I'd like a moment of your time to tell you about the 5th annual live stream for the Cure. To do that, I brought along 2 people whom I couldn't do this event without, Gerald Morris and Dan Brennick.
Over the past 4 years, the live stream for the Cure has raised over $30,000 for the Cancer Research Institute.
That contribution is helping to fund research into cancer immunotherapy, training the body's immune system to fight all forms of cancer.
This year, we're aiming for our biggest goal yet as we try to raise $15,000 in 50 hours on the air.
Tune in May 19th through the 23rd as we're joined live by podcasters and content creators from around the world.
With your help, we can continue the fight for a future immune to cancer.
Together, we can make a difference.
We're back with more of the Last Comic Shop, and as you just heard, we will be participating in the live stream for the Cure event this upcoming weekend. Yes, May 22nd at 11 o'clock a.m. Eastern Standard Time. You will get an extra hour of the Last Comic Shop as we review live Superman versus the Amazing Spider-Man.
The battle of the century!
That's right. And not only will we be on that particular program, but the folks that are running a live stream for the Cure will be participating in that. So you get some great folks from the Netflix and Swill podcast. They'll be joining us for this particular review. And so that we hope all of our Last Comic Shop fans come out and support it. As you heard on the ad, it is to support the Cancer Research Institute. Again, you can check out our Twitter page, our Instagram page. There's going to be links to how you can watch the live stream for the Cure, not only during our particular portion, but the entire marathon, which runs for, I think it's like 4 days or something like that, with podcasters from throughout the globe. So go make sure that you go out to livestreamforthecure.com, and there will be a link how you can watch our review live.
Help us help a bunch of great people, help a great cause.
That's right. We can make a difference. And one way we make a difference every single week is through our ratings, where we prove to some folks that we just don't have a vendetta against Brian Michael Bendis, that our comments and our opinions are valid and should be heard among those people that genuinely enjoy the comic medium. And so, of course, we're going to have a 1 out of 4 scale for rating Batman Universe, and it comes straight from our co-host, J.A. Scott. So how are we going to do it this week, J.A.?
Well, I was thinking Power Rings, but that's too much on the nose, so we're going to go with my favorite MacGuffin from the Octopussy movies, Fabergé eggs.
You're going to have to find some Vincent Price from the old TV show, an egghead.
Oh, that would have been a good one, too. Anyways, it's clucking chickens. It's whatever. Okay, so we're going to start off with Chad, who is a huge Brian Michael Bendis fan and also recommended that we read this book for this week. So, Chad, what is your rating in terms of clucking chickens or Fabergé eggs, however you want to say it?
Heck yeah, is my rating. No, this book is so much fun. The Derington art is beautiful. And the fact is we got a sampler platter of the DCU. We have one of Batman's greatest villains with the Riddler. We have a fight with Deathstroke that goes on. We have all those heroes, the Jonah Hex. They're in the Wild West. They're fighting dinosaurs. There was so much fun to be had with this story. You know, who is this best suited for? This is a great entry level. You want to find out about the DC Universe, just like Brian Michael Bendis was finding out about the DC Universe. I think this is a great way to do it. The art is wonderful. The action is great. The plot doesn't make a lick of sense. It doesn't matter. This is a 4-star book.
You mean a 4 Fabergé egg book?
Yeah, 4 eggs.
That's a big omelet. I agree, Chad. I loved it. I didn't care that the story was bonkers crazy because I thought it was supposed to be bonkers crazy. It was just fun. And to me, that's, Batman, as we said earlier. One thing that I really enjoyed when they're introducing each new character, and we didn't call this out, the letters were great. They would use that character's logo mark. So, oh my God, it's Green Lantern. Or it's the Green Arrow, it's just, I thought that was a nice little touch as a way of sort of, playing off all this Heroes Gallery and universe, extended universe that DC has that Brian Michael Bendis was playing with. And so I really I appreciated Troy Peteri's lettering with that. And I don't like to break down my eggs, especially a Fabergé egg. You wouldn't want to chip a Fabergé egg. So, I don't think it's quite 4, but it's not quite off. So I'm going to give it a solid 3 Fabergé eggs. That's still a pretty big omelet.
That's a Denver omelet for sure. You can get some peppers and onions and so.
Yeah, throw some bacon on the side and
Well, here's the shocker, folks. Everybody just heard how I just spent an entire segment just talking about how all the problems that I found with Batman Universe. Guess what, folks? You know what my rating's going to be for this book? It's a 4 out of 4. Primarily a 4 out of 4 because of Nick Derington. I won't lie. That fantastic spread in issue 5 alone, where Batman and Robin are fighting through floor after floor of ninjas, is just a sight to behold. But the reason why it's 4 out of 4 is because I'm rating this based on the fact I'm a podcast host that's attempting to try to bring new comic book readers into a comic book tent. That is my job. My job is not to be some jaded old man saying, "Get off my lawn, you kids." If my job was that, then this would be like a 1 out of 4 because, again, it's just me just complaining about things. Just my experience has taught me. I can complain about Brian Michael Bendis writing because I have read a lot of Brian Michael Bendis writing in other books.
You did complain about that.
But for somebody picking this up in a Walmart that maybe has never read Brian Michael Bendis before, this is exactly what you need. This is exactly what brings people into a comic book tent. This is what gets people, to Chad's point, excited about characters like Batman and the other minor characters like Green Arrow or Vandal Savage or Jonah Hex. Like, these are characters that aren't on the tip of everybody's tongue. And Brian Michael Bendis takes a very loose plot and just kind of shoves as much stuff in there as he can, because he knows that at the end of the day, that for every idea that he's shoving into this book, that's another comic book fan that might come away saying, I want to read now a Green Arrow book, or I want to read a Jonah Hex book, or I just want to read Batman going forward. Which, in this day and age, for me, that's what we're trying to get after, right? for just trying to get people to read comic books again, especially young kids. I don't know why they took them out of Walmarts. Stupid. Put them in places where kids can get them. The kids will pick them up. Make them big. Make them full of stories. Not only this story, but tons others, like Chad said. This is what you got to do, folks. This is how you get people into the tent. You write things like Batman Universe. So it's a 4 out of 4, even though I didn't like it.
They're also slyly introducing characters in here, as this was the first appearance of Ginny Hex, who's gone on to star in other DC properties. So Bendis was planting little seeds. It may have seemed like, only an inch deep, but there were seeds planted there.
And one thing we forgot to talk about is that whole nice little interchange between Batman and Alfred, when Alfred is afraid that Batman has an alien spore inside of him.
That was so great to watch Alfred lose his beans.
All right, well, let's move on to some other comic books. If you like Batman Universe, here's some other recommendations for you. And we hope that you go to your local comic book shop and pick up some of these recommendations that we will make. And I think they're all related to Batman, right?
Sure.
Even though they are a current book, a similar book, and a book out of left field, they all feature the Caped Crusader. So, again, if you like Batman Universe, here's some other books you can pick up. And we're going to start off with Chad and his, I guess it's current, because there was a current iteration of this book.
Heck yeah. And as a matter of fact, I was reading the modern version of Batman Black and White. And if you're unfamiliar with this, basically what DC does is they go to the best and brightest in the business, and they say, we're doing a black and white Batman anthology series, give us an 8-page story. In one of the most recent issues, they brought in Kieran Gillen and Jamie McKelvey, which you may know from things like Young Avengers or The Wicked and the Divine or a number of really great books. But they had a choose-your-own-adventure story with Batman going up against the Riddler. It's only 4 or 5 pages. I must have spent 45 minutes trying to figure out how to get to the end of the story.
Did you put your thumb on the page?
Yeah. No, you had to. You'd flip back and be like, oh, if this, then go to panel 7. If this, go to panel 42. And it's like, ah! And then it turns out it was rigged from the start. But it was so much fun. That was also along with a really awesome Lee Weeks story. You had a Gary Frank cover. There's a really awesome Nightwing story they snuck in there. But the best and brightest of the comics industry have worked on these Batman black and white books. Not just this current iteration, but all the way back in the past, including one Brian Michael Bendis. This series was the first series and only series for the longest time where he had DC work before he signed the contract to come and do this stuff. And you mentioned that Alex Toth,
his last work at DC was on the Batman Black and White. So again, that is a great series just to pick up because it's got so much history behind it. It's been going on for several decades now, and every so often they'll start putting out some more issues, and you can either check out the newest ones or, to Chad's point, check out some of the older stuff as well. And speaking of older stuff, we've got a similar book, and that comes from J.A. Scott. J.A., which one are you picking out from Batman's historic archives?
Okay, this comes out of the doldrums of the 90s when we didn't get a lot of really good stories from Marvel or DC. Everyone can pretty much agree that the 90s was sort of a wasteland. There were some gems here and there.
That's good stuff.
And that's the Nightfall. It was 3 trilogies that ran: Nightfall, Night Quest, Night's End. But for this recommendation, I'll just focus on the first part, the Nightfall bit, because it's 12 issues. I'm sure it's been brought together in various trades over the years. It's a lot of those story points are what they pulled out to use for the 3rd Christian Bale Batman movie with Bane. Batman goes through this trial where they've set him up. Every villain knocks him down, and he's physically weaker and weaker and weaker. And then he fights Bane, and Bane destroys him and breaks his back. And then he needs to coalesce. And Azrael takes over as the Batman because Gotham needs a Batman. But Azrael is a bit more violent and doesn't have quite the same code that Batman does. And it was really the start of darker turn for the Batman. So we start to see a lot more darker themes come out, and also how Batman deals with these criminals that are, he's been fighting for 50 years, and he throws them in jail and they break out, and he catches them, he throws them in jail and they break out, and it's just this never-ending cycle. And Azrael comes in and is like, yeah, screw that, I'm shooting you.
But man, that was such a fun story to read when that was coming out, because that was the first time I'd ever seen a hero have to run the gauntlet.
Yeah.
Like Bane's big plan, he breaks everybody out, and it's like, sure, Batman can beat all these guys one or two at a time, but when it's 37 of them, there's still a man at the end of the bat part.
Right.
And
it's got some great writing by Denny O'Neil throughout.
And it was the end of an era as Jim Aparo finished his storied run on Batman during the Nightfall storyline.
And you get Azrael as the Batman, but he wears this like super bat armor with art by Kelly Jones is just incredible. It's a really fun. It's like they took Azrael's costume and they melded it with the Batman costume to make this really futuristic bat armor that just looks wicked.
Very cool.
Yeah.
And also, it was during the same time as the whole death of Superman. So you had some parallels between the two big DC superheroes.
Well, that was one of the I enjoy Nightfall a lot of the times, but because it came on the heels of the death of Superman, it's sometimes overlooked by some because it was kind of, I hate to say it, when I was that age, I looked at it as kind of like a retread. They were like, oh, they did that with Superman already. And I was like, I don't want to read the Batman one because they did with Superman already. So
it's much better. It's much more nuanced, and it holds up better over time, I feel, than the Death of Superman book. Because the problem with the Death of Superman is he's not dead. So...
All right. Well, out of left field this week is another Batman book. It was one that I recently read that I had been putting off for quite some time, but when I knew that we were going to do a Batman show, I finally got around to it. I'm really glad that I did. It is Jiro Kawata Batman manga. For those folks that don't know a lot about the Batman manga, in 1966, the Batman TV series was exported to Japan, and it was extremely popular, like it was everywhere else. Like, this is no surprise. But as a result of that, an officially licensed Batman manga was published for about a year in the Shonen King magazine, and Kawata was primarily known for co-creating a character called 8-Man, and his kind of superhero and scientific detective mangas. But, again, it only ran for a year, and then it was largely forgotten until another great Batman name, David Mazzucchelli, went over to Japan and basically helped rediscover this series. And in 2008, they put out a book called The Bat Manga, The Secret History of Batman in Japan, compiled by Chip Kidd. And since then, a fully translated collection was released in 2014, and that's what I'm talking about today. I'm just going to say that it was just fun. And again, if you like this Batman universe, then this is right up your alley because you get, villains named Lord Deathman and another one called Dr. Gorilla. I'm sorry. I got to get a t-shirt that says Dr. Gorilla on it. That's the best name for any supervillain ever. Hands down.
Dr. Gorilla tells you to take your medicine. You're taking your medicine.
That's right. But it doesn't matter if it's just a stack of bananas. You're going to eat it. Very similar to a lot of other Silver Age Batman in which the plots are kind of wonky. But it's nice cotton candy type Batman for you to chew on. And the most interesting thing about it is that some of the characters from this Bat manga actually show up in other Batman books. Lord Deathman, who I just made a fun of, actually appears in Grant Morrison's Batman Incorporated. He's like some sort of Japanese. He looks real cool. Yeah, and he kind of looks cool in this series too. The art, as I mentioned, is really, really good. So if you kind of like your Batman a little bit weird, like your Batman of Zor-Anar, then make sure that you check out the Batman manga. So,
does it read like a manga? Left to right?
It reads exactly like a manga. You read it from left to right, and any case, what's also fun is our website, www.lastcomicshoppodcast.com. It's a terrific place where you can check out our website every single week. And again, we've got another Batman episode that you can check out right now. We did a review several months ago of Batman White Knight. So if you like this episode, go back and listen to that episode in our archives. Our reviews are evergreen, so there's never a bad time to listen to more Last Comic Shop. And you can do so by rate, reviewing, and subscribing on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Stitcher, Spotify, iHeartRadio, TuneIn, YouTube, CastBox, Amazon Podcasts, and a variety of other places. And while you're listening to our particular show, you can also check out on our website, what, J.A.?
Oh, you can check out our merch. Go to our merch store. We've got t-shirts, we've got hoodies, we've got can coolers, all sorts of stuff from the last comic shop. And this week only, if you order, it will come with a power ring in a Fabergé egg.
How many of those do we have?
A lot. They're actually those Kinder eggs. Well, wait, those are banned in the U.S., aren't they?
No,
are they back
come
now?
to the States in the last 2 years.
Okay.
I've never had one, but I really want to eat a giant toy egg.
Well, maybe you can pick up your Fabergé eggs, or maybe your Kinder eggs, or maybe your Batman manga at a local comic book shop. And Chad, how can folks find their local comic shop in their area?
Well, if you don't have a shop near you that you know of, you can always go to www.comicshoplocator.com, where you can find all sorts of information of great shops, just like the shops we were talking about today, places that might be putting on Comic Cons, or places where you can interact with people and not rub elbows because they're socially distanced still. But there are tons of places out there for you to get your comic fix. Check out the Comic Shop Locator to find one near you.
All right. And if you're in the Pittsburgh area this weekend, make sure that you check out Three Rivers Con. That's down at the waterfront in Pittsburgh.
After you've donated to
livestreamforthecure.com. That's the fantastic website where you can be able to watch us this weekend, May 22nd at 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Another hour of Last Comic Shop. And until then, I was the host with the most, Andy Larson, joined by Jay Scott and Chad Smith. And until this Saturday, when we hope to see you there, stay safe, stay sheltered, and above all, make sure that if you like dinosaurs, that you keep a couple around your crib. So when a Green Lantern asks you, you can say, yeah, didn't you always know? That's why I got them, because I like them.
Green Lantern might have a dinosaur. You'd never know, because Batman never comes to visit.
I'll tell you, I'm going to Thanagar, because I want myself some Hawkman wings.
The Last Comic Shop was a 2021 Black Angus production.